Excellent, excellent. Okay, Shadi, we're back on track. So you're part of this very interesting ethnic group. Okay, can you just give us a little brief introduction, tell our viewers who you are, and tell us a little bit about your community?
Okay, Marco, and everyone, Ida, good evening. I am Shadi Khalloul. I am Israeli Christian Maronite citizen, born and raised in Upper Galilee, in the very close to the Lebanese Israeli border, 4 kilometers from the border with Lebanon. Originally, I come from a town called Kfar Bar'am. It's another Maronite town, a pure Maronite town also here in Israel. I've served in the IDF in 1993 to 1998 as a paratrooper in the paratroopers, and my last position as officer in the IDF, I was in Lebanon in southern security zone of what we call the security zone of South Lebanon. And when I finished my military service, I went to Las Vegas, Nevada, and there is a big university there, not only gambling. So I studied international business and finance in Las Vegas University. And then I came back to Israel in 2006 and established an NGO that is called the Israeli Christian Aramaic NGO, with two goals. One is to revive Aramaic Syriac language, which is the language of the Christians in the Middle East and in northern Israel and Israel at all, and Lebanon and Syria and Iraq. That's the original language of the Middle East, and we share with the Jews this language because it was also the language of the Jews back then. Jesus, as a Jew, not Palestinian, as a Jew, he was a Jew and he spoke Aramaic language in the Galilee, and we still preserve this language in our Maronite church of Antioch, which is the language of our forefathers, and this language is also our sacred language in the church. So I am obligated to revive this language in our NGO. We have summer camp, we have youth movement, we are teaching the youth this language, and we achieved the recognition of Israeli government toward the Christian population of Israel, that they are recognized as Aramaic people and not as Arabs, as they were trying some pan-Arabist and Islamist to impose on Christians in the Middle East. Until today, the Jewish people and the Jewish government are the only ones who recognize us after 7 years of work since I returned from Las Vegas and founding the NGO. So we achieved the great goal for our people to save them from actually being wiped out as a people by Arabizing them and imposing them an identity that doesn't belong to them, and by this way actually annihilating the people, not physically only, but I call it spiritually, because language and identity is the spirit of a people or a nation. And that's what we have actually did and achieved as NGO in 2014. And thanks to the Israeli government and the Jewish people for doing so. I hope the Italian people and the United Nations also will follow Israel on this step. Second is we are encouraging our Christian youth here in the Galilee to recruit or to enlist in the IDF. Now you ask me why IDF? IDF is one of our goals because from my personal experience, I know what the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, gave me and to my personality and to my understanding of the Jewish society and Israeli society. And it allowed me a better capabilities of succeeding in the Israeli society and on the Israeli system. And I become the first candidate in the parliament of Israel within a Jewish Zionist party, Israel Our Home, to be representing Christians in the parliament of Israel. And this will not happen. This wouldn't happen if I wouldn't go to the army and understand better the Jewish society and the Israeli system, how it works. It gave me good abilities to talk in the same level with other Jewish fellows in the country because I served. I shared the burden of the duty of serving in this country, and at the same time I am achieving and I am receiving the same quality of life and equality as well in this country. So I launched a pre-military program for Christians and Jewish youth here in Galilee, in the Sea of the Galilee, and they are staying together, living together, studying together, and joining the IDF service together, and later on become leaders in the society. This leadership program lasts 7 months, and it is now, this year is the 7th year, and already we have 350 people that graduates from this pre-military academy that I founded in 2017. This is like, in short, what I am doing as a community. Just very short sentence. Maronites, in definition, are a Syriac, Aramaic, Phoenician people who inhabited the Levant, and in the time of Muslim conquest in the 7th century, they withdrew to the upper valleys and mountains of Lebanon. They were isolated there, and in isolating themselves there, they founded an army of 40,000 fighters headed by the patriarch Saint John Maroon, that was the patriarch of the Syriac Maronite Church of Antioch back then. And he led the army to defend their last stronghold in those mountains of Lebanon. And by defending themselves, they could preserve their national and the language, which is the Aramaic language. Without this defending themselves and protecting their identity, they will be lost. And when actually the Arabs tried to occupy them, because the Arabs were not originated here. To people, maybe people don't know, but the Arabs are not originated in Israel and in Lebanon or in Syria or in Iraq. The Arabs originated in Arabia, which is the Arab Peninsula. And this expansion or colonialism or imperialism that started by Islam, it started from there, from the 7th century, and occupying all this region, include North Africa till Spain. They almost succeeded on occupying Europe, to remind you. They almost succeeded on occupying Rome and Vienna. And they lost the war in Europe, and they were retreated, just for a memory, to refresh our memory.
Indeed.
This is the real imperialism
Exactly.
and colonialism.
Exactly. Shadi, you raise a very interesting point. Now, you see, because your community, which is an ancient community in the Levant and in the land of Israel, indeed, never consider themselves Palestinian. Okay? And this we need to impress upon our viewers here, the total fictitious nature of a Palestinian nation.
Let me share with you history, a little bit history. We, in our Bible, when Jesus was here, he was a Jew. The Jews spoke Aramaic. And in our history books, our national history, Syriac Aramaic books, we don't find there any word about Palestine. We see words about land of Israel, kingdom of Israel, cities of Israel. Jesus visiting the cities and came and touring the cities of Israel and the cities of Tyre and the city of in Lebanon, which is in Lebanon. We didn't hear about Jesus was in Bethlehem of Palestine. We see Jesus born in Bethlehem of Judah or Judea. We see Jesus coming to the people of Israel.
Exactly.
So let's remind the people, this name of Palestinian or Palestine was only a name given by the Roman Empire after the Jewish revolution against the Romans back then. and they called the land as a punishment for the Jews, Palestina, as according to the worst enemies of the Jews, which were the Philistines, who came from Crete, from Greece, and not from Arabia, as they were not Arabs at all.
Exactly. Unfortunately, people throughout the last at least 5 or 6 decades have been brainwashed with this notion of Palestine, which has never existed. And unfortunately, they've fallen into the trap of using the vocabulary of these people, which I think is something we have to be very careful with. I refer to it as an ideology, Palestinism, which is a mask for their real intentions. They're cloaking their real intentions, which is jihadist Islam, to establish control over the whole region, the Near East, and beyond.
Yeah, Marco, let's remind everyone also that until 1967, Judea and Samaria were occupied by Jordanians. Indeed. And under Jordanians, these people never talked about themselves as being Palestine and Palestinians, and they never asked for freedom and independence under Jordanian kingdom. They were Arabs like any other Arabs in Jordan, and they didn't feel they need a Palestinian state. Why they didn't ask for a Palestinian state back then from King Hussein of Jordan? It's just a proof that there was no Palestinian identity for those people there, and they felt they are Arabs like the Arabs in Jordan and Arabs in Saudi Arabia or Arabs in the other Arab states, and they were fine with this identity. And this made up Palestinian identity was only after Israel liberated those lands from the hands of Jordanians, who actually attacked Israel in the 6 days war in 1967.
Indeed, indeed. Now, you're in a unique position because, of course, you are fully bilingual. You speak perfect Hebrew and Arabic. So can you tell us a little about what's the prevailing sentiment now among the different Arabic-speaking populations in Israel? I speak of the different Christian denominations and Muslim.
Look, I would speak about the Christian population because I am representing their needs in Israel, and I know so many of them and from different denominations. I don't only represent Maronites, I represent also Greek Melkites, I represent a Greek Orthodox, I help the Armenians in Israel, and I help the Syriac Orthodox and Syriac Catholics. So I combine all those Christian identities, include the Latin church people or members in Israel that also part of our movement, of Aramaic movement here. And I hear from those Christians that, first of all, they support Israel fully against this aggression, against these hostilities, against this barbaric ISIS behavior that Hamas did, and against Hamas behavior. They fully support their country. They don't want to exchange this Jewish country with any other Arab regime in this region. They are feeling happy to be under this Jewish democratic state. And that's a good question why they prefer that. They prefer that because they enjoy freedom of worship, which they don't enjoy under Palestinian Authority. They don't enjoy it under other Arabic regimes. We saw what was the destiny of Iraqi Christians and how they are suffer until today. We see how that Syrian Christians also suffered in the last 10 years in the civil war. We saw how Lebanese Maronites and other Christians suffered in Lebanon and are oppressed by the Islamic political system that is controlled by Iran and Hezbollah, terrorist ISIS organization of today. We see how Christians in Egypt are suffering, the Coptic Christians. We see Christians in Pakistan, in Nigeria, and all other locations in the world, how they are persecuted. So here in Israel, they are enjoying freedom, they're enjoying democratic values. So of course, they feel it's their home, and they don't want to change it with any other
Very
system
good.
or
Let
regime.
me just interrupt you 1 second, Shadi. So let's come a little closer to home. What about the Christians living in those areas under the PA? Can you tell us a little bit more about the plight of the Christians who are living in those areas, let's say, administered, for want of a better word?
Look, I hear so many Christians contacting me because I am also like well connected to the Israeli government, or I can have access to the Israeli government. I can talk, and it's not only this government, it's even the government before and from left and right wing, it doesn't matter. I can talk with everyone here in Israel, with any other leader, Jewish leader in Israel. I am open to all of them, and they respect me and I respect them, and we have a conversation based on respect and recognition. And so Christians in the Judea and Samaria and Bethlehem specifically contacting us anonymously by WhatsApp or by Messenger in my Facebook, and they tell me, please help us get Israeli ID. We don't want to be under Palestinian Authority. Please help us on raising our voices, that we can like not speak, so speak for us. Please help us, for example, exposing a story of oppression or persecution in Bethlehem, taking their lands and closing or taking their stores, actually, by brutality, brutal force by other neighbors, Muslim neighbors. And I heard the stories that, for example, when we had 2000 Intifada of 2000, the uprising of those Palestinians in 2000, they took the Christian homes in Beit Jala and used them as a human shield to fire against Jews in Gilo, the neighborhood of Gilo in Jerusalem, hoping that the Jews will respond to the sources of fire and destroy the Christians' home, and those Christians will leave this area so Muslim can enter these places and re-inhabit these places with Muslim population, changing the demography of the region. This is exactly what they are doing in Lebanon today. Hezbollah in South Lebanon, Christian town, he's doing the same technique today.
Could you tell us, please, about the demographics in the areas, especially Bethlehem? I think you have significant data with regard to Bethlehem, the decrease in the Christian population in Bethlehem.
If you ask, like, this question is good question, Marco, because I was sorry about that to say to and disappoint maybe some people, but I was against Oslo Agreement. And you ask me why I was against Oslo Agreement, because Oslo Agreement gave Bethlehem, the city that was 90% of it under Israeli control, until 1995, Bethlehem was with almost 90% Christians.
Indeed.
And it was very, very friendly city, very peaceful city, very clean city, very welcome city to the tourist, and for pilgrimage too, to come to for the Church of Nativity. And we were going there without fear because we felt we are welcomed. And now this city, since 1995, Oslo Agreement, it became a city with a majority of 80% to 85% of Muslim population. Many of them are radical Muslims, belong to Hamas and Islamic Jihad movement and Islamic Brotherhood movements, and even under Fatah regime, under the PLO regime, they actually, PLO don't do anything because it is ruled by Islamic Sharia law, the courts ruling the people according to Islamic Sharia laws. And once Christians have a complaint against any Muslim who attacked him, the courts always side with the Muslim, because this is what Sharia laws are in this entity that called the PLO. So the Christians diminished, and they become only a minority that unable to protect itself, and many of them migrate and to look for a better future. And this city of Jesus' birth becoming today a Muslim town and not anymore Christians. And when you will come one day to Bethlehem, you might not find even the place where Jesus was born, and the Church of Nativity will have maybe empty people without community and without anyone to take care of those historical places as evidence for our faith in this world.
Indeed, Shadi, many people are under the impression that there is some difference between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. What's your opinion of that, regarding that?
That there's a difference?
Yeah, many people in the West, in Europe, think that the PA are the moderates and Hamas are the extremists. What are your insights into that? What would you say about that?
I'm sorry, I am a Maronite. I don't forget my history, and the worst happened for us was under PLO and Arafat, archi-terrorist, when he attacked the Christians of South Lebanon and butchered the people and slaughtered them, and did a huge massacre in 1976 in the city of Damour, an entire city of Damour, 582 people, Christian Maronites, were slaughtered. Children were thrown from third-floor building, and they were shot like dogs by terrorists, Arafat, Palestinian terrorists of Fatah. Let me tell you, they were opening the womb of the woman and killing the Christian Maronites.
As Hamas did recently.
As Hamas did recently in Gaza. I was not surprised by Hamas doing this brutal behavior. I was surprised by us as Israeli IDF forces that need to protect us from this evil, and I don't know where they were and if they were sleeping, what they lacked in order to defend our people. But I was not surprised by the brutality. I know this brutal behavior, and I am afraid this brutal behavior would come to Europe by those who are implanted in Italy and in France and in Vienna and in Germany and in London and in Moscow and in New York and San Francisco. They're already there. So it's only about time when this small ISIS will wake up among them and start attacking our brothers and sisters in humanity in Europe. And not only in humanity, I feel as a Christian that you in the West, you are our brothers and sisters because we share the same values and the same actually philosophy and the respect of life and not respect of death. And this is something that I share with you in the West, and we in Israel as Israeli people share with you, while the other side don't share this behavior. And while we defend our citizens, they actually use their citizens as a human shield to be killed in order to make their own propaganda against Israel.
Indeed, I feel that the Palestinist ideology has poisoned the minds of otherwise decent Muslims as well. This is the problem, that we have allowed this poison to seep into their minds. So tell me, what would you say to those people who believe that two states is the solution? Because we keep on hearing this, notwithstanding this horrible massacre, and indeed the support for it in not just in Gaza, but in Judea and Samaria, towns under the PA administration. What would you say to those people that the solution to the conflict is two states for two people?
I'm sorry to disappoint you. I don't believe in two-state solution. I don't believe that this is a realistic solution, because two-state solution will invite ISIS attack from Judea and Samaria, from the West Bank to Tel Aviv region. They will be very close to Tel Aviv, about 7 kilometers from Tel Aviv, from Ben Gurion Airport, from all Jewish communities. This will allow them to build a power like Hamas did in Gaza. And if they will succeed to do the same, and Hamas, there's no reason why Hamas cannot take the Palestinian Authority by democratic elections. they took it in democratic elections in Gaza, and they turned Gaza, instead of having Gaza as Singapore as the model for Judea and Samaria to copy it there. They did a terror entity, investing in hatred, in weapons, destroying people's life, and ruined the area. And we see what the result today. And this would be another failure if we allow it to have another failure in Judea and Samaria that will now not only attack southern communities in Israel, but this will have a risk of attacking neighboring communities in central part of Israel with the largest Jewish population in the country, very close to it. And this would be maybe one step before destroying Israel.
Indeed.
And let me also remind you, Hezbollah is waiting for us in the north.
I wanted
And
to
they
ask you
have the
about Hezbollah.
plan, and they declared it. They want to occupy the Galilee. So then we have Hamas in the south, we have Hezbollah in the north, and then we are allowing another Hamas, ISIS, in Judea and Samaria to destroy Israel entirely. This will not
Exactly.
happen. Israel will not allow that to happen.
Of course.
They have
yes.
maybe Palestinian state. Sorry, I would say that is my personal opinion. 90% of Jordan is Palestinian, are Palestinians.
Whatever
They can
that
be,
means, yeah.
they can enjoy Palestine there. And if you want to be here, maybe they can have autonomous region in Judea and Samaria to rule themselves, to enjoy life, to enjoy freedom, and live peacefully together in coexistence with the Jews
Indeed.
here.
Indeed.
That's it.
Indeed. That is our hope. Indeed, there are, I travel quite often in Judea and Samaria, and there are pockets of very decent people who would like to live in peace.
Yeah.
So Israel is certainly open to that. Now, at this point, I'd like to ask Edda, Dr. Fogarolo, whether she has any questions or whether anybody else has any questions. It's been a really enlightening evening with my good friend Shadi.
Marco, it's important for the people to know about Lebanon too. We should not ignore the Lebanese risk and the Lebanese threat. The Lebanese, not as a people, but Hezbollah from Lebanon.
Exactly, you are so right, Shadi. They are a danger. They've already committed a semi-genocide against the Christians in Lebanon,
and they need to divide this country and give the Christians autonomous region in Mount Lebanon and in the north of Lebanon, so they can manage themselves. And if the Shia Muslims want to keep fighting Israel, let them fight themselves by themselves, and not taking Christians as hostages and ruin their life, and let them migrate from their original homelands. And now we have 11 million Maronites living in Brazil, in Italy, in Europe, in USA, while only 1 million left in Europe, and they will not live anymore there, and leave this to be a jungle, another jungle, and not a successful state like it was before.
Indeed, you're so right. Lebanon was destroyed by the forces of Palestinism, who disrupted the balance which existed in Lebanon 40 years ago. And perhaps we'll have another program, another presentation where you'll tell us a little bit more about that. Edda, would you like to ask Shadi some questions? Okay, Shadi, so somebody's asking why the so-called Palestinians have never rebelled against Hamas. What has prevented them from rebelling?
It's the same question. Why the Muslims in Mosul didn't revolt against ISIS? Those are ISIS. And ISIS means they saw them how brutally they are killing Fatah Party officials, throwing them from 15-floor buildings when they took over Gaza. The brutality of those people are like dictatorships. Whoever rise up, they just behead him. They accuse him of being a spy for Israel, and or a Zionist or traitor, and they kill everybody who rise up. So it's a dictatorship regime. And many people also, sorry to tell you that, support them. Because if they didn't support them, these people wouldn't be elected in that election that happened before. And so I can tell you more than this. If now you go and make election in the Palestinian Authority in Judea and Samaria, Hamas will win. Because these people are educated in their educational system to hate the Jews, to hate the Christians, to not accept difference, to not accept bisexuals, to not accept any Western democratic freedom of faith or religion or behavior as a personal or individual. So whatever your belief and thoughts about how you would like to live your life, it's not acceptable. You need to follow Islamic Sharia law and Islamic system and Islamic education. So this is why more people believe on this Hamas regime, and they don't revolt against it because they see the Jews as enemies that need to be killed.
Okay, Shadi, we've got some other questions coming in. How do you think this war will end? That's another person is asking that. How do you think the war will end?
Look, I have no doubt we will, in Gaza, I'm talking about Gaza front, southern front. I have no doubt we will win this war. It will take time. I have no doubt because Israeli, unfortunately, finally understood that they have nowhere to go and that this enemy is really ISIS and they are here to kill them and annihilate them. So they have no choice. They need to win this war if they want to stay alive in this region and have their state. Otherwise, they will throw them to the Mediterranean Sea. So we will win this war. My problem is not with the Southern Front. My problem today is with the Northern Front, Marco. Exactly. My problem is with Lebanon, with Iran, sitting in our borders in Syria and Lebanon, and bringing Shia militia from Pakistan and Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria to Lebanon and to Syria's Golan Heights in order to attack Israel and have the big plan of occupying the Galilee and destroying Israel as they believe until 2028.
Indeed, indeed. Let me go on to that. Thank you, Shadi. Let me go on to another question. Okay, so Shadi, basically, Dr. Fogarollo was saying basically the end game of the so-called Palestinian cause is to bring an end to the state of Israel and then further expand Islam or fundamentalist or jihadi Islam into Europe and beyond.
Unfortunately, I can't agree more than that with her because it's very correct and true. And I have no more words. She said it. That's the best summary she can have actually for this cause.
Excellent, excellent. I've got another question here. In Europe, the attitude in Europe is an attitude of victimhood and a sort of an identification with this phony cause. What advice can you give to teachers to convey the real situation of what's really going on beyond all the rubbish we see in the media? What advice can you give for teachers to combat this phony Palestinist narrative?
First of all, I would say to Italian people who are in like Western country, don't be shy about history. Teach history. Teach how Islam tried to occupy you in Italy, what they tried and how they lost the wars in Italy. They could win those wars and take Rome, and now you will be covered and living under maybe despair and women will be all with burqa and living under, sorry, miserable life in Europe, because God forbid, if they win, that's what will happen in the future.
Indeed.
Tell
Indeed.
the youth about this history so they would know that this is the same cause that Israel is fighting now in the frontier of the Western world.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. We've got time for another couple of questions. Somebody's raised the idea of a ceasefire by Israel. What's your answer to that?
No, I am against ceasefire. I am against ceasefire with subhumans and monsters. This is a monster. These are monsters that are using civilians as a human shield. They don't care for the civilians and for the best of their civilians and our people. We should continue until we just finish the last Hamas terrorist and then set an order, a new order in Gaza with a new regime, with a new people from them that are educating themselves for a better future of coexistence, a better education system that is not based on hate and not based on exterminating other people who are non-Muslims, talking about them as monkeys and as pigs and as that they deserve to be killed and annihilated. This is, if we now cease fire, they will take advantage of this ceasefire.
Indeed.
And they will enter with journalists to Gaza just in order to pump and push their propaganda in the world and increase the pressure on American and US government and the Western governments in order to make Israel stop this war, and this way Hamas win. So that's why I am against. With all my heart breaking against civilians, but that is war. They started. We didn't start.
Indeed. I see we have a question here from Eugene Doyle of Radio Kilkenny, to whom you spoke the other day. So we're getting a little bit of, we're casting our net wide. He asks, do you believe that Western countries like Ireland are inherently anti-Semitic when they fail to see Hamas as a terrorist, or ISIS, subsequent to the 7th of October attack? And indeed, does the UN represent this sentiment as well, of this pervasive anti-Semitic sentiment?
Well, let's talk about Ireland. Ireland is, I don't know what's wrong with these guys and why they are behaving this way, but it looks like it's anti-Semitism. It looks like anti-Judaism, Zionism. It's all the same thing, actually. It's all the same thing. This is maybe Jewish hatred. For some reason, they don't think that the Jews deserve the right to exist as other nations. And specifically the Irish, I was surprised because they are actually will be like attacked by those radical Islamists. If they take over in Europe, they will be attacked exactly the same like Jews. And if they think they come to Gaza and live in Gaza and they will be accepted, they will not be accepted, because they are non-Muslims and they are Christians or they are atheists. So if you are not Muslim, you will not have the right to live in Gaza. And that's the Irish people should understand. They should support the country that share with them same values, that share with them the same human rights for other people. So that's exactly what I expect from Irish people, especially Catholic people that have these values implanted on their history and in their Bible. Now, about the UN, I don't expect a lot from the United Nations, because most of this United Nations compose of Arab and Islamic states. That's the majority, and they have oil, and oil is money, and this money is actually power. And you know, there's a saying, who has the money, he has the word. So he can say whatever he wants and he will be respected. So they actually buy the nations with their money, imposing their policy of hatred to Jewish state, the only democratic state in the Middle East.
Indeed. I have another question here. So here somebody's asking, what will become of Gaza? Who will govern it?
Who will govern in Gaza?
Yes, who will assume power in Gaza?
I am sure there are already plans for Gaza that US and Israeli leaders and other European powers already discussed it with the Israeli Prime Minister in their meetings. Your Prime Minister was here in Italy. What's her name?
Meloni.
Meloni was here.
Yeah.
Sarkozy, what's his name? Not Sarkozy.
No, Macron.
Macron
Yeah.
was here. The British Prime Minister was here. Biden was here. All those countries were here to discuss the future, not the war. Everybody agreed that we should get rid of Hamas. Everyone. They were discussing what next. And that's what next is. I'm sure they have plans, and I don't want to mention anyone because this would actually affect him and will destroy this plan. But I'm sure I have someone in mind. He's not sitting today in the Palestinian Authority neither. He's outside in the Arab countries. He was very political and in charge of security forces in the Palestinian Authority, and now he's not in Gaza and neither in the West Bank. He's in another Arab country that they will bring him to Gaza and let him manage and try to build this again from rebels.
Very good. I think that wraps things up for today. Dr. Fogarollo, have you any other questions to ask?
Grazie mille.
Thank you, Shadi.
Thank you, Auguri. Ciao.